know what I'm doing anymore. So yes, I am a year late, but I finally watched SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout, the 20th anniversary celebration of the yellow character. And well, as you can tell by the title, I have a lot of thoughts on this episode, but before we get into it, I thought I'd actually review it first and give my thoughts on the show as it is. And it's actually a very nice episode because it not only gives a lot of references to the show's past, but it also gives me a glimpse into what the show is doing now. And well, the glimpse is not that great. The two main things that really define SpongeBob as of recent, with its biggest problems, as well, the animation just being so vibrant and overexpressive that it's disturbing, and of course the biggest problem, its comedic failings. When it comes to the animation first, animation was never really SpongeBob's greatest strength. Sure, it was charming, it was very nice, but it was never really the reason why you turn into the show. And it's not really the show's greatest weakness right now either, but it is a deterrent. The characters are just so overly expressive, and the animators are just having a field day doing the most horrific things to these characters. I mean, it all started, I guess, presumably with the episode where SpongeBob gets a splinter in his thumb, but god damn, there's twice in this episode, Plankton loses his one eye. He's completely blind for a couple of seconds, and it's just so disturbing how these characters get so easily mutilated, and how they're just so many body contortions and cutoffs and bending, and it's just one of the most odd quirks and oddities that you can have with a show that I just am disgusted at how the characters move, and it's just, they do such horrible things, and it's such an odd thing to describe, but I think if you just look at any clip from this episode, you'll just see how the animators just seem as though that they're showing off their degrees or whatever they had to earn to actually work at Nickelodeon, instead of actually trying to do something that works. The animation is both disturbing and over the top, and it just really never has, molded well to the original intent spirit of the original 3 seasons. But as I said, we're not really in this for the animation, we're in this for the comedy, and the biggest strength of SpongeBob has always been its humor, not just for the fact that it was going with humor that was going over kids' heads and it's appealing to adults. SpongeBob humor appeals to everyone. It really hits the absurdist niche for kids, where you can just laugh at some of the most absurd scenarios possible, but it also has foundationally great comedy with a lot of really well thought out punchlines that take a good amount of time to actually build up the setup and payoff. And this episode shows the worst of that comedy. There's a whole section of this episode, like a minute and 30 seconds, just entirely about beans. Like, a person comes on and dances about beans. Everyone's cheering him on about beans. He asks questions about beans. He asks, what's your favorite flavor of beans? Someone says strawberry beans. Then he shoots beans out of a cannon at people, and it's just very odd. Just, it doesn't seem as though that there's just any relation to human experience at all, or human comedy. I can't imagine anyone over the age of 7 finding that in the slightest humorous. It's not that SpongeBob should be totally highbrow, but it has completely abandoned its way from actual good comedy of any kind, and I guess comedy is one of those hard things to explain. There's not something that I can really say to make something funny or not funny, but I think one glimpse at the episode and you'll see what I'm talking about. But a lot more concrete of an example is when SpongeBob and his friends go into the office. My friend gave a really insightful critique when he was saying that old SpongeBob would have taken this as an opportunity to take numerous jabs at contemporary workplaces and make so many jokes about the mundane nature of work. That's basically the entire episode where Squidward goes into the fancy Squid Village and is in total happiness. It's a whole commentary on adulthood. Carson Runquist, a famous YouTuber, did a whole video on that. That's brilliant, and not only is brilliant in its own right, but is also a dissection of the brilliance of the show. Whereas in this episode, we have a bunch of people wearing ape masks and then jumping around, well, like apes. It's a saddening departure from the show's original spirit that is just overall quite upsetting to see fully realized. And as for the episode overall, I don't know. Hit it with a 7. 7 is usually the score I give to something where I don't feel that it is really absent when it comes to really significant flaws, but it still had enough that I enjoyed about it. And the references in the episode were really phenomenal. I enjoyed watching that. But overall, it gave the actual spirit of modern-day SpongeBob, which is just utter garbage. But as you can tell by the title of this video, this is not just a review of the episode, it's a talk about the themes of the episode and what's actually going on with it. And well, it's fascinating, at least at the end portion, because the big subplot of the episode is actually people trying to wish SpongeBob a happy birthday. The people on this tour with him, they're trying to sing it to him, and they never do. The characters are trying to plan a surprise party for him, but he never gets it. And then by the end, we have a bunch of celebrities, some of which are quite obscure, wishing SpongeBob a happy birthday. And well, when it comes to the actual episode itself, it was most likely that this was just a punchline by some writer at Nickelodeon. But goddamn if I'm not going to dissect it for views. Because what's really interesting about this, particularly when it comes to the very end, these aren't kids wishing SpongeBob a happy birthday. These are adults. And besides from Rob Gronkowski, most of these people are not watching SpongeBob for their own personal enjoyment. It's much lower than what they would consider intelligent and appropriate for their age. They're probably just passerbys, people with children that have SpongeBob on, and they buy kids the backpacks and they pass by once in a while, and hell, maybe they'll watch an episode with their children, and maybe they can even say that they're fans of the show, but it's not really a great representation of the actual fan base of the TV series. The much more realistic option would have been to have kids on there wishing SpongeBob a happy birthday. After all, they are the people that are staying up on Friday nights or waking up Saturday mornings to watch SpongeBob and all his adventures. It's not these adults. And I just found it really interesting that the actual fervent part of the SpongeBob fan base wasn't there to support him. The people actually tuning in to these horrendous renditions of this television show, they weren't even paid tribute to. The lack of kids represented in the episode and the lack of people that loved the show when they were kids, when the show was still respected, people such as myself in the late teens and early 20s, well, that's the critique in and of itself, because the episode is not really a celebration of SpongeBob as a great show, because it isn't right now. It's not a great celebration of the show's legacy, because even though it has many references, it didn't even fully dive in on all of that. It's really more of a celebration of the fact that SpongeBob has endured. This is a celebration of endurance, of SpongeBob seeping his way into pop culture, even in parts where we wouldn't expect him to, such as into the lives of many adults whose children like SpongeBob, rather than an actual celebration of the art he is a part of. And you may think this is just a really complicated way of me saying that SpongeBob sucks nowadays, and in a sense it is, but I would have left the episode on a much higher note if I actually saw kids with SpongeBob merchandise wishing SpongeBob a happy birthday, talking about how they love him so much, instead of a bunch of people that feel totally disconnected from the actual product talking about it. It felt very lifeless at its end, seeing a bunch of celebrities who really have shown no affection towards the character, who clearly have not grown up with the character, wishing him a happy birthday in a half-hearted way. It showed me what SpongeBob has become. More part of some people's lives in a kind of lax fashion. It's not something that people are actively involved and engaged in, both from a kid level and from an adult level. It's something that we've just come to accept, that SpongeBob is a kid's show. Kids will watch it no matter what, and there's not a bunch of care over whether it's actually good. It's just the show that people grew up with, the show that just keeps on chugging along, and it's going to stay that way, which was just overall discouraging when the 20th anniversary, and held just a series of like 6 or so episodes celebrating the end of SpongeBob and 20 years of television, I felt as though that would have been a better amalgamation of what the Sponge character has been doing all these years. But what it kind of showed was just a point of stagnancy, which is a word that I haven't used in a while. I love calling stuff stagnant. I just love it. But that really is the case with SpongeBob. We didn't get to see a lively fan base, one that's involved with it. We got to see what people think about the show when they have time on their hands to actually wish him a happy birthday, which is what happened. Bunch of people chilling out, having it on their TV, wishing SpongeBob a meaningless happy birthday. I'm gonna go do something else with my life now.